Guys, so today we're going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution in America, the first part of the 1800s. So we are going to look at some of the different technological, political, and social developments during this time. We're also going to be introduced to a very major player in American history, a guy named Henry Clay. So make sure you remember that name as we continue forward here. So we're also going to see the rise of nationalism and sectionalism in our country and kind of the issues that go along with that. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so for technological developments, we're looking at both the North and the South here. So let's talk about how things were going before the 1800s, okay? So the old way of making stuff is called craft. So essentially, you've got people in their homes, right, and they're just making stuff, right? They make the whole product from start to finish in their homes, whether they're making it for themselves or making to sell. They specialize in one thing, so you've got like the blacksmith, and you've got like the wheel maker and the barrel maker, and all of these different people who specialize, right? So then enter these two gentlemen. First, Eli Whitney. So Eli Whitney introduces the idea of interchangeable parts. So rather than making everything by hand, you make the different parts and you can put it together, right? And if something breaks, you can just take that part off and put another one on, and you don't need an all-new product, right? Well, this is great. It means you can kind of mass produce things, right? Next, we have Samuel Slater. So Samuel Slater is from Britain, and he brings the plans from a textile mill in Britain. They've been kind of using their textile mills in Britain for a long time. And he brings the textile mill from Britain to the United States and starts building textile mills here in the United States. This is going to lead to an increase in industry in the United States, right? Factories where you can make large amounts of things. You can mass produce things. So this is going to be a big deal. So this is going to lead, like I said, to mass production, which leads to the decline of craft. So rather than during the colonial era where you have, if you've ever been to like Colonial Williamsburg, you know, you've got like the blacksmith shop and then this person, this person, that's going to go away, right? Instead, we're going to have a factory producing the entire thing, okay? So this is just, in case you are unsure, this is before coal, this is before the steam engine, right? So these textile mills are built on water, all right? Basically, you've got this giant water wheel, right? That goes on the current. So the current's like this. It pushes the water wheel. When the water wheel turns, it turns these big belts on the shaft. That's going to turn the machine. See how this one's on a machine here? That turns the machines. So that's what gets everything working. So of course there is some limitations to this kind of textile mill. You have to have running water, right? You can't just be at a still river or a river that's been dammed up. You have to be on a river, so that's important. But this does allow for a much bigger increase. And textiles, remember textiles is clothing or cloth, so that's where these first industries are going to be in. In the South, we have a whole different story. So Eli Whitney, in addition to interchangeable parts, also invented the cotton gin. So here's the thing about cotton. Cotton was actually on the way out in the South before Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, because cotton is really hard to grow, really hard to pick. It takes a lot of man hours, a lot of labor, and you don't really get a lot from it. If you look at these pictures here, see, cotton's really dirty. It's got a lot of seeds and debris and stuff in it. And before the cotton gin, you had to pick all that stuff out by hand, right? And it would take hours, so much work. And really, there's just no way to make that profitable, right? Well, the cotton gin, which you see here on the right, is a machine that you put it in there, and it's got these like claws that pull at the cotton, and it's going to get all that debris and seeds and all that nastiness out, okay? So the cotton gin actually allows for cotton production to go much more quickly, okay? So as industry is growing in the North, cotton is starting to become the king of the South, okay? So we're going to see how that kind of changes into society, right? So in the North, all right, as more of these factories are popping up, cities are starting to come up around these rivers, right, where these factories are being built. People have to have somewhere to live, right? Like they're going to work in a factory, they got to have a place to live, right? So everyday items are going to start becoming cheaper because they're being produced in a factory. Standard of living is going to go up. You don't have to, spend an arm and a leg on this one thing because it's been craft made. So that's really a big deal. But the mills also need workers, right? So here's a question. Who are you going to get to work in these factories? You can't pull farmers away from their homes, right? Like, they're the breadwinner of the family. They got a job to do. So you need to find somebody else. Where they turn to is women, okay? So let's look at these farmers in the North, right? You're in a small family farm. You start having kids. Well, kids are great because they help you on the farm, right? Like, that's why you have children, to do your chores, right? Except, like, you really want boys because boys can do all the manual labor outside. So if you are a man who had like 12 daughters, right? There's only so many people that can sweep the floor of the house. Like, what am I going to do with all these daughters, right? So you've got like extra girls lying around. So what are you going to do? Well, you know what? I don't need you at home, but I can send you to the factory and you can send money back to us, right? So a lot of these girls, some of the older girls, would leave the farms and go to these factories. They would live in these boarding houses around the mill, and they would get, their salary from the factory, and they'd, live with the other girls who work in the factory. And this whole kind of system sprang up about this. It's called the Waltham or the Lowell system, and these are named after factory owners. So essentially what would happen is you would live in this boarding house, you would get paid, then you would go shop in the store, where the store is going to be owned by the factory owner, right? So you buy things from the store, from your paycheck, which you got from the factory owner, and you give it to the guy in the store, who is the factory owner. Cool, right? You go to the factory owner's church, and you go to the bank owned by the factory owner, and everything in the town is controlled by the factory owner. So by the end of the month, your entire paycheck went right back to the factory, right? Which seems kind of lame, right? But it meant that everything was taken care of for you. You didn't have to worry about anything. So that was kind of nice. As these factories are developing, slavery begins to decline and is in fact outlawed in many northern states. It wasn't automatically outlawed in the North, right? Like, this is something that took time. There were slaves in the North for the first part of American history, but slavery is starting to decline in the North. It's not necessary up there anymore. So this table here just kind of shows you the effect of working in the factory. You can see everything's run on bells, much like your school day, right? You can see, you've got this first bell at 4:30 a.m., right? And you work until the second bell, and you've got the second bell and the third bell. You've got a lunch bell at 12. You've got 35 minutes for lunch. You go back. You ring back in at 12:35. At the end of the day, you go home at 6:30, right? And it says, except on Saturday evenings, you might have to work a little bit longer on Saturday. You get Sunday off, so that's nice. Now, why do you think the hours are different in the spring and summer, or in the spring and fall, right? So think about the daylight. There's no electricity yet, so you're working on daylight. So whatever the sun says, that's when you're working, right? But it's not an easy life. If you are not inside the factory when the bell rings, you lose your job. They can find another girl who will take your job, right? So it's not an easy life, but it does completely change the society of the North. Well, in the South, we have a completely different societal development. So remember, as I said, before the cotton gin, cotton was on the way out, right? So if you look at the slaves in the South, right? So everything up here, under 10% of slaves in the purple areas. The yellow through red areas are kind of where slaves were the highest. So you can see there's like 10 to 30% of slaves here, 10 to 30%, 10 to 50% in these little orange areas. Where it's red, it's over 50% slaves, but you can see there's very few of those red areas. Slavery's kind of on the decline. After the cotton gin, whoa, what do you see? What happened to slavery with the cotton gin? Well, it's pretty obvious. Slavery grows and starts to expand westward, right? Look at this map. It was right here, very isolated. Now it's, right? So slavery starts to grow, expands westward. The value of slaves increase. Slaves start to become more profitable, so you can sell them for higher prices. And so what we have here are societies starting to change. So slavery is outlawed in the North. It's increasing in the South. What is happening? Are the South and the North becoming more alike, or are they becoming more different? I hope you said different, because that's the answer. So this is something called sectionalism, right? So sectionalism means that you are putting the good of your region above the good of your nation, okay? So sectionalism is going to be a pretty major issue in the United States. So whenever you see a state that says, I like this better than that, I like this better than the national government, that's going to be sectionalism, okay? So when you start to have issues, what do? You call the marriage counselor, right? So let's imagine the North and South is a married couple, right? They got along great at the beginning of their marriage, American Revolution, right? They defeated Britain, they're doing pretty good. They start to have a few problems, but you know what married couple doesn't really? I mean, you know, there's always going to be an issue, but you know, we're still good. But as your marriage goes on, you know, you grow further apart and things get harder, and you know, the South, you know, she likes her slaves and the North doesn't, and yeah, things are getting kind of hard for the North and the South. So you call the marriage counselor. We're going to try and solve these problems. The marriage counselor, well, that's Henry Clay, okay? So Henry Clay is doing his darndest to try and keep the country together, okay? That's what he wants to do. So he comes up with a plan called the American system. And the goal of this plan is to create regional interdependence. Wait, come again, Miss Jones? I don't know what that means. It basically means the South and the North are going to depend on each other, right? We want, if the North depends on the South and the South depends on the North, then we're not going to fight, right? We need to be able to depend on each other. So here's how he proposes this happen. So the first thing that he wants to do is say, hey, North, you sell your manufactured goods to the South and the Northwest, right? That's kind of that territory region. The South sells cotton to the North, right? So you sell cotton to the North, they make it into textiles and sell it back to the South. The Northwest, they have dairy and beef and grains, they're a farming country. They sell all that to the North and South, right? So they get their food. So this is kind of how he sees everybody all depending on each other, right? So it's all about a very intricate system of like who buys what and who needs what and what raw materials we have and that sort of thing. But that's not all. There's more to the American system. The other thing that he says is that we need to revive the national bank. Okay, so this is the second national bank. As you know, they're very creative in naming things. The first national bank expired, so we're going to revive the second national bank because this is going to allow us to create a stable currency. We also want to raise the protective tariff. Okay, so remember, a tariff is a tax on imported goods. What that means is you're going to buy domestic products. So think about if we're taxing British goods, right? So let's say we've got two markers, right? We've got the American marker and the British marker. Well, at first glance, they look exactly the same, right? Well, that's because it costs the exact same amount to make them. But there's a tax on the British marker, right? So the British marker comes, pay a tax on it, ends up on the shelf right next to the American marker. Well, the American marker is selling for 50 cents. The British marker is selling for $3. Which one are you going to buy? The 50-cent American marker or the $3 British marker with the tax on it? You're going to buy the 50-cent American marker, right? So if you raise the tariff, it's going to make you buy American. Well, that seems great. Buy domestic products. We love it. Right? Maybe? We'll see why that's not exactly a problem or an issue. Then the next thing we have is that the government needs to increase communication, right? So the way we're going to do that is by building roads and canals, right? Canals are a relatively new thing. Canals are basically like channels cut between rivers to make it easier to transport goods. And of course, paved roads make it easier to move around. This is going to create better internal trade. So like if you're trading with the north to the frontier in Pennsylvania, it's going to make that easier. It's going to make communication a little bit easier. So like maybe Andrew Jackson won't find out that he fought a battle 2 weeks after a war ended, right? Because that would suck. Oh wait, we did that already. So some of these early canals that we have here, this just kind of shows you how they basically cut into the landscape right here in order to connect the canals to the rivers. Basically the way the canal works is you got a guy on horses and they're dragging the boats through the canals, all right? So the canals are supposed to go upstream, so the mules move ahead, the boat continues into the lock, right? They open the gate, the boat goes in, they close the door, the downstream gate is closed, right? This is going to open up the other one. This water is going to go in, make it go up, water tops out, they open the other gate, and the boat sails right on out, right? And like I said, you see it's got the mules that are basically pulling it out. This allows the boat to move upstream, and like I said, it allows for transportation to be a little bit easier. So if you look at these canals here, you can see the Pennsylvania Canal connects from right here to here, the Ohio, right? Now the main one you need to know, write this one down, the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is huge. It connects to Lake Erie. You can see there's a branch of it here, 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 and here, right? So the major canal that you need to know is the Erie Canal, okay? The other one that we do, like I said, he builds the National Road. He actually hires Daniel Boone to build the National Road. So if you look, it starts in the Cumberland Gap up here in Virginia and goes through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, right? So the idea here is that we're opening up communication to the Northwest, right? Making an easier way to do it. Daniel Boone was a pretty famous name at the time. He's kind of an explorer, that sort of thing. He is, you know, the namesake of Boone, North Carolina, in case you were wondering. So this is the idea behind this, is that we're going to create something that's going to make America more unified, right? That's the idea behind the National Road, the bank, all of these things. We're going to see how well that actually works as we continue to look through this nationalism and sectionalism unit. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.